I'm Nathan, I'm an addict. Grateful to be in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. I always say thank God for sponsorship and let the newcomers know ain't no big eyes and little U's. And thank you, Jacqueline. That really warms my heart. That might be the best introduction I ever got to anything. So, you know, man, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be of service to Narcotics Anonymous. You know, man, I'm just here, just an addict seeking recovery. You know, welcome to the out-of-town visitors, man. I know what that's like. My journey has consisted of many places along the way since I've been clean, man. I've been doing the same job for 23 years, and that's what brought me here to Salt Lake. And our literature says that we ain't never seen a person fail that's lived the Narcotics Anonymous program. It also says that meeting makers make it through the storm. So, you know, before Narcotics Anonymous, I had the same job, except I was the undiagnosed addict, and I tried other solutions that obviously didn't work. An addict alone is in bad company. So when I got here, I found the meetings, and you know, I got involved, man. I got a service position. I make meetings all over town. I've been to 24 to 27 meetings on the meeting list. Our literature says that we visit various groups. You know, in visiting various groups, you know, you find that place where you connect with, and you make that your home group, you know, and you get to meet people in the fellowship, man. And I always share that part of my journey, because if you're new here, your journey will change, right? You're going to get an opportunity where you got to go back and visit family, right? And you're going to have to deal with some difficult situations. Just know that an addict seeking recovery help is available. You know, it could be 5 minutes from where you are, it could be 5 miles, or it could be 20 miles. But, you know, an addict seeking recovery will go to any length to keep that freedom. You know, in the beginning, it was about freedom from the drugs. And the Just for the Day just reminded me, man, you know, in our symbol, it talks about the broader the base, the higher the point of freedom, right? And so today, you know, it's about freedom from self, man, because I can return to my sickest behaviors without ever using, and it usually begins here. And it was talking about choosing life, choosing recovery over self-destructive patterns, right? Our literature talks about that recovery is an active change in my ideas and my attitudes, right? So depending on what I'm thinking, gonna determine what I do, right? So I try to get as much information as I can, man, to protect me from me, man, because I ain't never needed no help fucking up my life. You know, as far as I can look back, you know, I've always ended up in situations because of my emotions, man, which created my actions. You know, my inability to take personal responsibility, I created most of my own problems, man. You know, so if you knew, man, I found my story here. When I got here, before I went from treatment to streetment, you know what I mean? My story was big. You know what I mean? Like, my using story was big. And you know, I thought it needed to be big, right? And thank God for sponsorship, man. Thank God for our predecessors that told me that they didn't care where I come from. They didn't care who I used with, what I did, what I didn't do, how much I had, how much a little I had, but what I want to do about my problem and how they could help. And so in coming here, man, and following direction, I bought our literature, which is written by addicts for addicts, right? And so I found my using story, and I need to qualify so I can get that out of the way, because, you know, what has happened is my using story ain't changed. Everything I tried failed. Everything, right? It says in our symbol that probably the last to be lost is the stigma of being an addict, and that was me, right? I hadn't made it to prison, right? I hadn't lived under the bridge. I hadn't done a whole lot of things that my mind told me what an addict was. So I didn't think that I qualified. I had a little drug problem, right? You know, sometimes I overdo it. I went down the wrong block. Sometimes I get violent or pushed into a corner and I come out swinging. But, you know, this addiction shit, like, nah, not me, right? And so what I've learned has helped me greatly, man. Like, that it wasn't the drugs that made me an addict. It was our reaction to the drug. You know, and following instruction from a sponsor and starting at the beginning of the book. in the introduction, it says that alcoholism is too limited of a term for us. We are people who must abstain from any mind, mood altering chemical. I said, shit, that was it. Because I did this. This comes from page 5. Before coming to NA, most of us tried everything we could think of to control our drug use. We tried switching drugs thinking that we only had a problem with one particular drug. We tried limiting our drug use to certain times or places. We may have vowed to stop using altogether at a certain point. We may have told ourselves that we would never do the things that we watched other addicts do, then found ourselves doing those very things. Nothing we tried had any lasting effect. Our active addiction continued to progress, overpowering our best intentions. Alone and terrified of what the future held for us, we found the program Narcotics Anonymous. And that's my using story, man. That's my using story. That's all the highways and the byways, all the people, the places, and the things summed up in one paragraph. You know what I mean? So I ain't here to talk about my using. I'm here to talk about how Narcotics Anonymous, how any addict can lose the desire to use, stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. Because that's what happened for me, right? My story in Narcotics Anonymous goes like this, man. I came here for many reasons. The first time my higher power sent me here, which was the probation office, right? I didn't stay clean. Our literature says that we get clean for many reasons, but we can only stay for one. Right, and so my second trip to Narcotics Anonymous, my ex-wife told me I had a problem. If I don't get some help, she was going to leave. The third time, my grandmama told me, boy, you out of control. What is wrong with you? And I told her, Grandma, I don't know. I try to do the right thing, and then all of a sudden, abracadabra drugs, I don't know. Undiagnosed addict, And the fourth time, man, I came, my job said, man, you got to do something. I don't know what you're going to do, but you got to do something. And I always ended up back in Narcotics Anonymous. On 8/15/05, my sponsor asked me what I was going to do different. And I couldn't answer. I don't know, man. Because my story wasn't that I stopped coming to meetings. I came to meetings on a regular basis, man, right? I rode on my steps, man. I did service work. Why I can't stay clean, right? And I know why today, right? And so my sponsor asked me what I was going to do different, and at that time, I couldn't answer that question, right? And so what I know is that we ain't never seen a person fail that has lived the Narcotics Anonymous program. That's the only thing I hadn't tried. Right, I tried all kind of ways, right? Only working certain steps, only hanging around certain people, but never like the Narcotics Anonymous program. And so since 8/15/05, I ain't found it necessary to use no matter what. Since 8/15/05, I ain't wore handcuffs. Since 8/15/05, man, I ain't did the things that drove me to use drugs because of how I felt about myself. I ain't ended up in corners, wondering what the fuck is wrong with me. And today I know that I suffer from a disease, man, right? And it says that it's not the drugs that make me an addict, it's my reaction to the drugs. So in reading the introduction to the basic text and understanding about the mind-altering chemicals and what it do to an addict. It says, for an addict to use is to die in more ways than one, man. In recovery and relapse, it talks about it's something in our self-destructive personality that cries out for failure, right? It also says that eventually the temporary escape to using ain't worth the misery. And so what I did was I began to follow instruction. Right? Our literature says, if you want, we have, do what we do. Right? And so I followed the instructions and guidance of the sponsor, right? I began to practice getting honest, man. I had a problem telling the truth, man. How you doing? I'm good. Everything good. And somebody told me one day, well, won't you tell your face that? Because I wear my feelings on my face. Right? And finding the ability to get honest, right, has really helped me, man. Because I had that overwhelming ego when I got here, man. You know, like men don't cry and men don't tell other people their problems. You just deal with it. Oh, in our literature it says that surrender, many of us believe that surrender is something only weak and cowardly people did, right? It says that we saw only two choices: either keep fighting to control our using, or just cave in completely and let our lives fall apart. We felt like we were in a battle to control our using, and that if we surrendered, the drugs would win. In recovery, we find that surrender involves letting go of our reservations about recovery and being willing to try a different approach to life, right? And so that's what I did. I got rid of my reservations about recovery because I could see it working for my sponsor. Every time I relapsed, he was still there. So I could see the program working for you. But I didn't believe on a deeper level that it could work for me because of all the things that I tried before I got here, right? And so in the process of learning how to surrender on the deeper level, it went deeper than just the drug, right? Because the literature says that the drugs are only symptom of my problem. You know what I mean? Why at a year and 2 days I still feel like this? Why I still overreact like this? You know what I mean? And so the program is a process of learning and learning about the disease of addiction and how it operates, man. It says that the disease of addiction is cunning, baffling, and insidious. And I looked insidious up. If you ain't ever done that, I recommend you look that up. That's a cold piece. It says subtle treachery, defies all detection, seductive. And I thought about all the ways the disease of addiction made using look appealing, in spite of my experience, in spite of every time I had good intentions, you know, like I was just going to do a little bit and end up gone for a week, right? Many times I told myself that, right? And the disease always changed shapes, right? As soon as I got a handle on one area of life, it came at me in another way, except I couldn't see it because I didn't have information, right? Information around here is valuable, man. Like if I can't see myself coming, how can I expect to protect myself from the disease of addiction? And through this literature, which is written by addicts for addicts, right, it has given me the ability to protect myself from myself because of the collective experience of the other addicts around the world. Right, they put it in written form for people like me that I could understand it. You know what I mean? And like it talks about in our first step that many of us recall the moment of clarity when we came face to face with who and what we had came as a result of using. All the justification and rationalizations that we use to justify our using stopped working. In Who's an Addict, it says that the disease of addiction talks to me in my own voice, which make treatment and diagnosis difficult, if not impossible. You remember like the cartoon, the angel and the devil? You ever had that conversation with yourself? Nathan, man, we can have one, man. You doing good, man. You been clean for 60 days. A little sip ain't gonna hurt nothing, man. Nathan, you remember the last time you did that? What's wrong with you, man? Calm down. Nathan, don't worry about what he telling me, man. You good. Right? And I would fall victim many times. And that's just a simple explanation using drugs. But it happens to me in many different ways, man, where the disease of addiction talks to me in my own voice. And, you know, like, as the journey continued, like, I came here, I'm finally able to stay clean, like, but I only wanted to do certain things. You know, like all the shit that I created, I just wanted to leave that behind. I just want to create a new life from right here. But unfortunately, that didn't work. What happened is the disease of addiction was patient, right? And everything that I was running from at the years between 2 and 4, the rubber met the road. It was like they had a group conscience. the back child support, the IRS, got a divorce, like everything you could think of, it happened like in the same week. I shit you not. And my sponsor, in his wisdom, he said, this is what we've been training for. What you gonna do? It's your turn now, right? You gonna do what you always did, or you gonna accept responsibility for who and what you became as a result of using? And so I chose to take the high road, man. And he let me know that in choosing the high road, it's a level of pain with choosing the high road because it goes against everything that I know. So, you know, I walked through the divorce, man, with integrity. Like, I didn't even know what the fuck that was. Like, I never called my ex-wife a bitch. I never told her she was a worthless piece of shit. I never did anything to harm her, man. When I moved out of the house on the hill, clean, you know, I told her about this chemical, and I told her how to reset the sprinklers, and I did this, and I left everything, man. I left everything. I chose the high road, man, because what my sponsor instilled to me is that when you do things from the heart, right, you don't have no ill feelings when it don't work out. And so what happened as a result of the marriage ending was the damage that I did them other 4 clean days in the years prior to them clean days, right? I created too much damage to move forward. Wasn't no trust, wasn't no honesty. It wasn't built on principles, right? It was built on self-deception, man, and character assassination and holding a fucking hostage. I didn't have a wife, I had a hostage. You know what I mean? And I accept the responsibility and I move forward, man. As a result, fast forward 10 years later, like we the best of friends ever. She ain't never said nothing bad about me, and I ain't never said nothing bad about her. People like, why y'all ain't together? You know what I mean? So the IRS showed up, right? So I was looking for the softer, easier way. You know what I mean? So I ran across this tax guy in Narcotics Anonymous. He fixed my shit, right? And the next year, I owed more than I did before I started because I ain't changed the behavior. Right, I was still filing married at 9, cheating on my taxes. So I got backed into a bigger corner, right, clean. And so I finally got to the point where I realized that I couldn't move forward until I dealt with the past. Then grandma died. Biggest reservation I had, man. Then a week later, my granddaddy died, man. Then my uncle OD'd, man. Then my best friend, clean, used and checked out, man. Like, what do you do? Right? So I followed instructions. I did what people before me did, man. I came to the meeting and I told my truth, man. In spite of how it sounded, I cried for the first times in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, man. And so as a result, as life continues and in the process of working the steps, like in the 4th step, it says that the 4th step is the most loving thing that I could do for myself. To the contrary of what you hear a lot in the rooms. Oh, it's scary, it's this and that, right? The 3rd step, I took you to the 4th so I could take you back, right? And show you the journey and what happened for me and how when I got to that point, wasn't no fear about the 4th step, right? Because I had internalized the principles in the first 3. The 3rd step says that the proof of this step gonna be shown in the way I live, not how I talk. The 3rd step talks about surrender on a deeper level, right? It talks about by the time I make it to the 3rd step, I may be only willing to surrender certain areas of my life. And that's why I was, right? I surrendered the drugs, but I ain't surrendered the rest of that shit. And my sponsor had told me that one word can change the whole content of what we reading, right? This is the other fellowship stuff. So it says that we made a decision to turn our will in our lives with an S. That's plural. Not just my using life, but my marriage, my job, right? My relationship with the co-workers and people in society, the whole thing. Not just some of it. But see, through the collective experience, they know that's impossible for strong-willed people like us. So in our literature, it talks about how we may even get angry that God permits it. In our new literature, in the Living Clean, it says that we learn just as much from missing the mark as we do from hitting the target. right? As long as I'm moving forward, I'm making progress, right? In the second step, it says that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So all the boogaboos and the perception and the dogma that I brought here from my past life, all I got to believe is that if it worked for you, that it could possibly work for me. Right? In our first step, it says we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction and our lives had become unmanageable. Past tense. Right? So when I'm looking at this and I'm working these steps with a sponsor, right? Because I had a flamethrower. Right? I had a flamethrower. It was everybody else's fault for the shit that I did. If she wouldn't have said what she said, I wouldn't have had to say what I said. If he wouldn't have did what he did, I wouldn't have had to do what I did. But if I'm paying attention and I'm following direction from the sponsor, we got what's called the steps before the steps. This is a program for learning, man. I ain't no philosopher. When I got here, I lost the ability to read, but everything I tried failed. So my sponsor told me when I got here, I had the pretty blue book from treatment to treatment. You know, I'm going to meetings, I'm carrying this blue book because while I got clean, that's what people do. They carry our literature. If you ever in Dallas, Texas, right, you'll remember what I'm telling you. The women, right, the older women with time, the newer women, right, the young men, the men with time, they carry our literature. When you go to meetings, like they share their experience, utilizing the collective experience on how they learning how to live without the use of drugs. And so I began to mimic them. And so my sponsor told me that I need to listen to learn and learn to listen. Listen to learn and learn to listen, right? Listen on the level of feelings, right? And so he told me directly after that what I knew about this way of life was on the first 2 pages. And if you open the pretty blue book up, mine ain't so pretty no more. But if you open the pretty blue book up, look at that shit. That's what I know about living life without the use of drugs. Nothing. Right? So humility is as vital as food and water is to living, right? So he didn't say what I know about life on the first 2 pages. Not that I hadn't done many things. Not that I'm not intelligent about a lot of things. But I don't have a clue about living life without the use of drugs. I don't have a clue about going through a divorce and not using anger, fear, and resentment to justify the mess that I made of my life. I don't know how to walk through a death and grieve a natural process. I don't know how to change jobs, man, and move forward without leaving a bang, right? But the steps before the steps help me. And so I talked to you a little bit about the symbol in the introduction, right? So in the steps before the steps, in what my sponsor taught me on page 15 and a half in this book, in the newer edition, it's 16 and a half. It says, recovery is what happens in our meetings. Our lives are at stake. We found by putting recovery first, the program works. We face 3 disturbing realizations. 1, we are powerless over our addiction and our lives are unmanageable. 2, although we're responsible for our disease, we are not responsible for our recovery. Although we are not responsible for our disease, we are responsible for our recovery. 3, we can no longer blame people, places, and things for our addiction. We must face our problems and our feelings. That took my blame thrower away. Right? I got to take responsibility for my active change and my ideas and my attitudes in spite of what I brought here with me. Right? I can no longer blame the wife, right, for the destruction that I made of my marriage, man. I can no longer blame the absence of my father for the decisions that I'm making at 46 years old. Right? I got to take responsibility for my feelings. Right? But first, how you do that? How you do that? So recovery is what happens in our meetings. So I came to meetings. And I began to listen on the level of feelings. And I brought these two skills with me, man, right? Eye hustling and ear hustling. So, I kind of grew up in and out of the streets, right? And so on the block, man, you got to pay attention to your neighborhood or you might not live that night. You understand? Right? So my granddaddy used to tell me stuff like, boy, I ain't listening to what you said. I'm listening to what you didn't say. Right? So I brought those skills here with me, right? The ability to listen, right? I just hadn't activated, right? So I was ear hustling in the meeting, and this guy, they asked him, how you doing? And he said, okay. He said, okay is not a feeling. Let's go back to the back of the basic text. And they went to the index, right? And in the index, it's got a list of feelings, good, bad, and indifferent. And the suggestion to him was that he learned how, he looked those feelings up and learned how to put a name on his feelings. So he'll be more unlikely to respond to his feelings. So I tried that, right? And I got clarity. I thought I was angry when I was disappointed, right? I ain't no anger that was about, anger was the shortcoming, the disappointment was the defect. I was like, ain't that, wow. And so I began to try this out on an experimental basis, man. And so what happened after the years 2 and 4, like the road got easier, right? When I stopped running clean, like my life began to flourish, man. I became excited because of the evidence that I received from doing the next right thing. Right? In our literature, they say we try this out on an experimental basis, man, because I was skeptical. I didn't know if this shit was going to work with me, man. You know what I mean? You know how many things I tried, man? They dipped me, like they locked me up. Like, man, grandma, they sent me to the school. Like, my old lady tried to move me to the suburbs. Like, man, like everything. Like everything I tried failed. So why would I come here brimming with love and happiness? Excited that this shit gonna work for me. I didn't think it was gonna work for me, man. But I began to trust the evidence that I saw, right? I'll never forget this, if you knew, man, know this. Some of this shit like a time release capsule, right? God will only give us what we can handle, right? And so he don't give me too much at once because it'll overload me. So as time goes by, like the time release capsule, like a Tylenol, you take it at 3 o'clock, it don't work till 8 because the capsule got to disperse, right? And so the dude told me that if you want something different, do something different. Sponsor told me we try this out on an experimental basis. Sponsor said, if you don't change the man that you were when you got here, that same guy take you back out, right? They said in our literature that the disease of addiction is progressive even during abstinence. And I said, damn, that ain't very hopeful, right? And so what happened, man, is in year 5, I began to take responsibility for my life. And I had to rebuild my whole life, man. When I got clean, I was 33 and a half years old. I never did shit besides go to work. My wife did everything, and I never appreciated it because that's how my whole life was. Since I left the nest with mama, grandmama, I didn't know that I was female dependent. But through the 12-step process, man, I began to accept responsibility for my reality, right? So now, at 2.5 years clean, I'm out here in the world, man, by myself. I ain't never had a cell phone on my own. I ain't never rented an apartment in my own name, right? It was always a woman co-signer, right? I ain't never bought a car. I ain't never set a doctor's appointment. I ain't never washed, fold, and put away clothes. I ain't never washed and cleaned my own apartment. I ain't never made the bed. I ain't never did shit. But I did a whole lot of living. I had been a lot of places. I've been doing the same job, man, since I was 19 years old. I've been from one end of this country to the other. I experienced a whole lot of things, except learning how to take responsibility for my own life. So what happened after that is I began to try this out on an experimental basis, and I liked the results. So I called the lady when they froze my bank account, right, for the back child support, and I didn't care to assassinate the lady. I took responsibility. I said, ma'am, I know it's not your fault. I just need to find out what I could do. If they check my history, in the last 4 years, I've never missed a payment. I'm not trying to avoid my responsibility, but I really don't understand what this is about, right? And so she said, hold on a minute. And she looked at my history. In them 4 years, I began to create a new history, right? And so the lady said, this ain't right, Mr. Cozy, right? But at that time, that was the height of the recession, right? I'm talking about not blaming people, places, and things, right? So I took responsibility. I treated the lady with dignity and respect because she's just a liaison, right? And so the lady went to her supervisor, right? Typically, they take 80% of your money, period, that you got in the bank. You can get it the hard way, or you can sign the paper. We'll draw it out and you won't be able to use this bank account for a year. How you want to do it? But in my case, because of the new history, right, the lady was able to make it where they only took 50%. Right? Now, I wasn't brimming with love and happiness, but I was excited. I couldn't believe it. All I had to do was be nice and tell the lady the truth. Right then, you know, I told you about they had a group conscience, right? So the IRS, I ain't filed taxes in 8 years, right? But all those years, I made 90 plus grand. Fuck the fucking government. Motherfuckers raping me, rolling on the resentment, right? So they backed me into a corner clean. God blessed me with a guy in the room that retired from the IRS, opened his own tax service, and helped people like us. But he gonna need my help. Right? So he get me out of the pile of shit. I create a new pile of shit. Right? Now when I create the new pile of shit, I humbly go talk to him again. Hey, Jim, I fucked up, man. I ain't changed my taxes like I said I ain't changed my W-2 like I said I was going to do. And so what happened for the year 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? They took my income tax. I was disappointed. I was sad, you know. And in year 7, I got my first income tax, right? New levels of freedom. Like I didn't owe the IRS no more. I didn't owe back child support no more, right? I stayed steady. I began to trust that the process would work for me. So one day at a time, right? I did the right thing in spite of how I felt. And so between 7 and 10, it's like, whoo, literally. Right? My whole life changed. So every time I went to go get an apartment, I had to pay a big ass deposit for water, I had to pay a deposit for everything because my history in 33 and a half years wasn't that great at all, man. And then my new history between 0 days clean and 4 years wasn't that great either, right? But I wanted the results like everybody else was getting, but I didn't want to put in the work. I only wanted to surrender certain areas of my life. I ain't want to surrender my life. I ain't want to ask God for help for everything. I'm a man. I could take care of some of this, right? Wrong. So the hope shot is that I kept coming back. I kept working the steps. I kept telling the truth, man. I kept being of service to Narcotics Anonymous, and my life began to change. So I walked into this place in Arizona. I'll never forget this. I walked into this place expecting to have to pay a deposit. I walked in there on a Sunday afternoon after I pulled in town to go work. And I go fill out the application. And the lady said, it's possible we could get you in today. I was like, oh, that would be great. And so she said, we'll give you a call. And the lady called me back in a couple of hours and like, Mr. Cozy, you've been approved. You can move in today, actually, if you want. And I was like, oh, man, that's awesome. So I go back. And I get the keys, fill out the paperwork, and I'm sitting in this apartment, and I had a moment of clarity. My sponsor's voice said, just stay consistent, man, and one day you'll have a new reality too. And I realized that I ain't have to pay a deposit. I realized that my background check went through. I realized that my life was changing, that I had a new reality. Now, I ain't talking about the apartment. I'm talking about the level of freedom that came with doing the next right thing, even when I didn't believe it would work for me in the beginning. I'm talking about following instructions, right? In step 5, it says that we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So when I told my sponsor about those things that I did, I told him the fucking truth, right? And through telling him the truth, he helped me see how I created my own demise, right? Because stealing that tool from the job wasn't the exact nature when I had thousands in the bank. What drove me to steal that tool when I got thousands in the bank and the tool only worth $50? What's wrong with you? Right? Recovery and relapse says it's something in my self-destructive personality that cries out for failure. Right? So learning, man. So, right, in 6, it says that we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Not that he would, just that I was willing. All I had to be was willing. All I need to do is believe that you believe. Right? Then it goes on to say, we humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. I was confused for years. I don't know about you. I sat in this fucking room and I would come to meetings and people would expound on character defects and shortcomings, and I'd be like, I wonder what the fuck they talking about. But I never asked questions, right? Because of ego and false pride. I ain't want you to know that I was ignorant. And then I looked the word ignorant up, a lack of knowledge, right? What else I'm supposed to be, right? And then I kept coming back. This right here blew my socks off. I kept coming back, and they had a guy up here, and he was sharing on step 7. And he answered my question. This comes from step 7, page 34 of the basic text. It says that character defects and shortcomings are those things that cause me pain and misery all of my life. Boom! That's the damn problem. Lying caused me problems all my life. Overreaction caused me problems all of my life. Self-deceit has crippled me all of my life. And things began to make sense with clean time. With clean time. Right? Like a time release capsule. Right? And so now it says that we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Now it's a problem that lies in this step. It's hard to surrender to something if I ain't identified it as a problem. When I feel like a victim, like you ain't gonna make it on the list. Right? But if I'm following the steps as they design, when I get here, I'm going to have a level of freedom that's going to give me the courage to write down the people, because I'm going to understand about indirect harm. I'm going to understand about direct harm. You know, I indirectly harmed a lot of people, man. But how can I remember all these people's names? Right? How do I keep moving? Sponsor helped me, man, because I had the ability to tell them the truth, man. I'm confused on really what they want, man. I can't remember all them fucking people, man. When me and Junebug and Pookie was running the block, man, it was all kind of cats that crossed our path, man. Like, how the fuck I'm supposed to remember all them people? Right? So I categorized the people, right? But I kept moving. So what came with it was a new level of freedom, right? We made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure those or others. So back in step 4, in the step working guide in Narcotics Anonymous, right, it's designed to provoke thought. So in the fourth step, it talks about real and imaginary guilt and shame. So I had a lot of guilt and shame. Most of it now I understand was imaginary guilt and shame. So on October the 16th, 1994, me and my older brother went to the hood to go pick up the package. If the drugs don't get you, the lifestyle will. Something I had done many times to the same place, except that day they wanted the package and the money. And they didn't mind laying us down to get it. So I got shot first. My brother got shot a few minutes afterwards. He got hit in the chest and he died and I lived. For 10 years after that, man, like, remember I was telling you I was the undiagnosed addict? I ain't understand why I did what I did, right? I ain't understand about my feelings, right? So my thoughts dictated my actions. So that day, I felt a lot of imaginary guilt and shame because I believed that I could have done something to change that day. Today, I accept responsibility for the decisions I made. My brother made the same decisions, right? And we understood the game, but we really didn't understand the game. We didn't understand that the game was life or death, man, when you out there in the using world. And one of us lost our life. And so in step 10, it says we continue to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admit it. How you do that? How you do that when you come from a life of self-deceit? When you come from a life of self-centeredness? When you come from a life with a blame thrower? How you say, man, I'm sorry that I overreacted. You know what I mean? I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, man. What can I do to make it right? How the fuck you do that? Practice. Practice. You do it when you mean it and when you don't mean it. Right? And it says that we sought through prayer. This is a cold piece right here, man. This is a cold piece that takes a lot of years of practice to even get close to what they asked me to do. Check it out. It says that we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. Only. That's it. Not no bargaining tool like I did in 2. You know what I mean? Like I only prayed, man, when there was something in it for me. But only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. So what that looks like in my life, because of my misconception of this God thing, man, it was many days that I believed that I was following God's will and I was way off course. Way off course. Clean. I ain't talking about using. I'm talking about clean and learning how to live without the use of drugs. Making sense of this new way of life, man, and learning how to practice this and tell the truth. Sponsor, I'm confused, man. I'm confused. I don't really know what they saying. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Understand this. If you don't hear nothing else I said, it said that the still sick and suffering addict don't got no clean day. Right? We all eligible for the destruction of the disease of addiction, no matter what your clean date is. It says that my recovery is contingent on my spiritual development. So if I ain't growing, I'm going. If I ain't growing spiritually, I'm subject to the same devastation as I was when I was using. I know y'all have seen it. I know you've seen the person, man, with all the byproducts of being clean. You know the byproducts, right? The job, the girl, the car, sociable acceptability, all that shit. But I got a hope shot for you. I'm just sharing my experience, strength, and hope on what Narcotics Anonymous has and continues to do for me. I ain't no spokesman for Narcotics Anonymous. I'm just talking about my experience, strength, and hope on what I did and what I continue to do, but I got a hope shot for you. Because I felt like a little you, right? So I verbally talked about all 12 steps. I'm finna give you a hope shot right here. Step 12, page 119. It works how and why. The green and gold. It says the ways in which we carry the message are varied as our memories. There are, however, some basic guidelines that we as a fellowship have found to be helpful. First and foremost, we share our own experience, strength, and hope. This means that we share our own experience, not theories that we heard from other sources. This means that we share our own experience, not someone else's. It is not our job to tell someone seeking recovery where to work, who to live with, how to raise their children, or anything outside of the realm of our personal experience. Developing a personal style to carry the message rests on a simple requirement. We must be ourselves. We each have a simple, one-of-a-kind personality that is sure to be attraction to many. Some of us have a sparkling sense of humor which may reach someone in despair. Some of us are warm, especially warm and compassionate, able to reach an addict who has rarely been the recipient of kindness. Some of us have a remarkable talent for telling the truth in no uncertain terms to an addict literally dying to hear the truth. And so that's what my sponsor was for me, man. He was that guy, that little guy. I got the same sponsor. He showed me unconditional love all the way throughout my process, man. Right? And he didn't care about my size. He didn't care about the mask that I put on to protect the outside world from getting inside. You know, he told me the truth about what he saw in my life, man. And because of his ability to tell the truth, man, he helped me tap into my truth, man. And so our literature says that those who get the most from this program are those whose sponsorship is important. I sat around the room and in my head, I said, I don't need no damn sponsor. Fuck a sponsor. I don't need no motherfucker telling me what to do. This me talking to me, that little voice. I don't even understand what a sponsor is. I think a sponsor is like all the other people in my life. Told me what I needed to do and didn't do it themselves. Right? Because of my misconceptions that I brought here with me, I was ear hustling one day. And somebody told that guy that he should get the sponsorship pamphlet before he makes a decision to get a sponsor. Right? And so in the sponsorship pamphlet, it dispels all that shit I got up here. I was way off course. Right? It talks about what a sponsor is, what a sponsor is not. Like a sponsor is not a dictator and tell me what I need to do, what I should do, what I shouldn't do. Like that's not what a sponsor is. A sponsor is simply another recovering addict that had learned how to implement the 12 steps in their life. I was like, oh, okay. So I got a sponsor. I still got the same sponsor. Told me a lot of shit I ain't want to hear. You know what I mean? And so if you heard nothing else, man, this is what I hope you heard. We ain't never seen a person fail that has lived the Narcotics Anonymous program. That any addict can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. That third one is tricky. Pay attention to your surroundings, right? Finding a new way to live is tricky because the disease of addiction changed shapes, man. And as I sat in the rooms, it began to be appealing. Like, I ain't really hurt nobody. Well, I mean, you know what I mean? Fuck the IRS. Like, I ain't really hurt nobody because I don't pay the fucking IRS, right? That's what I thought. But, you know, man, I'm grateful for real. I get a little animated, a little excitement. So I need to tell you about who I was before I got here. I was still 6'2.5". Well, I walk with my head down and I mumble what I talk. You had to poke me to say something. It was yes, no answers. How you doing today? Good. You all right? What's wrong with you? Nothing. Why you act like that? I don't know. You know what I mean? And as a result of these steps, man, my spirit came alive. I began to believe that this could work for me. I began to believe that God had protected me from dying, right? In our symbol. In our symbol, it says, and most people don't even know this. I didn't until I kept coming back. Check this out right here. In our symbol, it says simplicity is the key to our symbol. It imitates the simplicity of our fellowship. All sorts of occult and esoteric condensations can be found in this simple outline. If you look those two words up, understood only by a chosen few. Like ain't no accident that I lived through the horrors of addiction. It was a purpose for my life. I wasn't lucky, right? It was a purpose, man. And today I understand my purpose. So no matter where I go, I get in the middle of Narcotics Anonymous, man. Like I get a service. I do what y'all did. I do what y'all do, right? And as a result, I ain't found it necessary to use. So if you new, welcome to Narcotics Anonymous, man. Those who get the most out of this program are those whose sponsorship is important, right? And working the steps is my best guarantee against relapse. That's what they found out. Through all the experiences of thousands of addicts, my best guarantee is working the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous. Do it scared. Do it scared. Right? Start out being honest, and then by the end, you'll be able to tell the truth. That's what happened for me, man. You know what I mean? So I'm going to keep coming back, man. And I'm grateful that y'all showed up for the meeting tonight. This is still very hard for me, man. But I've learned how to be obedient to my God, right? Just 30 minutes before I got here, I just got off the freeway. I went to Vegas this weekend. Just got off the freeway. My body was tired, the mind, you know what the mind tell you, right? But when lives are at stake, mostly mine, why would I stop anything that has given me the freedom that I got now? You know the reason I had gas to put in the truck to go to Vegas? You know the reason that I still got my whole check on the way back from Vegas? Right? Is because of this. This is the only thing that has ever given me consistency in my life. Only thing. Not that school I went to, not that church I went to, not the wonderful mother that I had, not the wonderful grandmother that I had, not the beautiful wife that I had, none of that shit. Not the $100,000 I made, none of that shit. But this right here, from the one-horse town in Truthful Consequences, New Mexico, to major cities. This right here. They showed me unconditional love, man. They loved me when I couldn't love myself, man. I looked different. I talked different. My story was a little bit different, but they didn't give a fuck, man. What can we do to help you, man? Like, we want to see you live, man. Don't use no matter what, Nate. Don't use, man, like you worthy, man. Just stay. And I began to feel that because I listened on the level of feelings, man. I began to feel and see the truth. I'm going to share this one more thing. This comes from my second step because this is very important for me. So no matter where you at on the journey, know this right here. I'm sorry. This comes from page 24, the second step. It says that we can become obsessed with self-destructive thoughts. We may feel an urge to fall back onto what seems easier, the familiar ways of our addiction. During these times, we need to recommit to our recovery. And it says that we trust that we're undergoing a fundamental transformation, even though we may not yet understand the full implication that it will have on our lives. As painful as it seems, we must change. If we trust that there's growth despite the pain, we will walk through these times more readily. Right now, I've had some of the most trying situations in my 12 years in the last 8 weeks. But I show up. I show up because all the evidence behind me in them 12 years, I show up for my life, man. I show up for my son, man. I show up for my little boy, man. I show up for my little boy and his bad decisions, man. I show up, man, because they talked about breaking the cycle, breaking the chains. Because Narcotics Anonymous has broken the chains in my family, man, and I owe my son the unconditional love that y'all taught me, right? Well, just because you made a bad decision don't make you a bad person. But what you gonna do about it? You gonna continue to make bad decisions, or you gonna do something different? And so I chose to do something different, and as a result, I ain't found it necessary to use drugs in spite of the mistaken judgments. And that's the best thing I got to offer, man. Thanks for letting me share.